High Court. All right, let's take a look at the front page of the Daily Nation, and here is that report I was making reference to. Rogue quartet in toxic sugar scam. KEB's boss and 26 other officials have been suspended over the scandal. 1 million kilograms, the sugar 20,000 50-kilogram bags, was flagged in 2018 for missing expiry dates. It was to be converted to ethanol but was mysteriously released from government stores. 27 is the number of officials suspended, including the KEB's managing director, Bernard Njiraini. Ms. Estangari has been named the acting MD. The bigwigs, the quartet in question, 2 politicians from Mount Kenya and 2 senior government officials said to be behind the release of the consignment. Court date: 7 officials quizzed by DCI and released on 100,000 shillings bail to be presented in court today. I see also written here 2 MPs and 2 top government officials are said to have orchestrated the release of the condemned consignment in what appears to have been a well-coordinated syndicate to enrich a few individuals without a care about the damage this, quote, poison would cause to the health of Kenyans. We'll be looking a little bit about at this report by Roslino Bala and Moses Nyamori as we proceed. I see some good news also on the front page of the Daily Nation. The wait is over. 22,000 retired teachers paid 16 billion shilling pension. The government has finally paid retired teachers 16.08 billion in delayed pension after 2 decades of clamor. National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Njuguna Ndongo said the amount is for revised claims from 22,022 teachers who retired between 1998 and 2003. I also see on devolution, governors have threatened to shut down counties over 94 billion shillings. County chiefs are set to meet today to discuss the matter and take a final decision on a possible shutdown of operations. They're demanding 94.4 billion shillings in delayed payments for the months of March, April and May. And let's leave the front page of the Business Daily, the Daily Nation there, and get into the Business Daily. But we will be coming back to this report on the toxic sugar scam. So as for the Business Daily now, wage bill busts budget by 16 billion shillings on Ruto key hirings. And this report is by Constant Munda. The wage bill for the national government in the 3rd quarter of this financial year bust the budget by nearly 16.55 billion shillings, signaling the expenditure pressure that came with fresh appointments by President William Ruto's administration. Expenditure on salaries and wages amounted to slightly more than 152.63 billion shillings in the January-March period against a target of 136.09 billion. According to the data the National Treasury published, the over-expenditure of 12.16% came at a time President Ruto was at the tail end of completing the reconstitution of his government through appointments to key positions. And when I scroll further down, I see also on the front page of the Business Daily, Kenya offers 100 dams to private investors in a 1.7 trillion shilling project. On the ticker, Treasury teeters on brink of breaching new overdraft limit. The Treasury teetered on the verge of breaching the new limit on emergency loan facility at the central bank earlier in the month amid rising cash flow pressures wired to a farm in China in 2013. Okay, let's see. Next is Co-op Bank posts 5% profit growth in Q1, and Dutch firm to offer corporate debt guarantees. Holland-based fund manager Cardano Development has announced plans to establish a corporate debt guarantee company in Kenya to help firms raise funds from the capital markets. Okay, let us now take a look at the Taifa Leo front page. But at the very top here, I see Jaindi Kisera has spent something and is quoted as stating, with the depreciation of the currency and high forex rates, foreign investors have been finding it difficult to repatriate share sales proceeds out of Kenya. Okay, Taifa Leo now. And this is the headline, Sukari Chungu. Mahasla wanunua sukari kilo moja kwa shilingi 200 na shilingi 10 kwa mara ya kwanza, na mambo bado. Bei ya panda. Wa Kenya maskini watalazimika kunywa chai bila sukari kutokana na kupanda kwa bei ya sukari nchini. Kufikia jana, kilo moja ya sukari ilikuwa ikiuzwa kwa shilingi 200 na shilingi 10, na kilo 2 400 shilingi 20 katika maduka mbalimbali Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu na Nakuru. And images there of the price tags. Wanafunzi wa vyuo vikuu vya kibinafsi kupata mkopo wa HELB. And that is further down on the Taifa Leo. I see kwa vidokezo NDC ya Jubilee kuandaliwa Jumatatu ijayo. Mkutano huo wa wajumbe utaendelea ulivyoangwa licha is the licha printed twice? Let me see my hard copy. Yes. Licha chama hicho kuzuiwa kutumia ukumbi wa Bomas Nairobi, David Murathe amesema. And Hartum ni vita tu, wengi wakilala njaa. An image of empty shelves there. All right, let us take a look at the front page of The Standard now. And it reads as such: mystery of dirty sugar. So we've gone we've come back round to this subject matter, and an image there of the now suspended KEBS MD, Bernard Njiraini, although there has been appointed in an acting capacity one Ms. Esther Ngari. And there is a quote of the notice of suspension, and that communication came from the Executive Office of the President, and it reads as such: the sugar consignment comprising of 20,000 bags, 50 kilograms, had been imported into the country in the year 2018 and condemned by KEBS for want of expiry date specification. KEBS condemned the consignment as unfit for human consumption. And contaminated food for the second time. Government officials and officers are being sent home over the same sugar consignment that was condemned in 2018. Two cabinet secretaries gave conflicting accounts on the impurities. You will remember the debate on mercury. And I see here on the side, kilos of contaminated sugar was released to the public. That is 1,027,000. The number of government workers suspended from 11 agencies, and 28 billion shillings total import of sugars, molasses and honey. And the images inset are of former, as I mentioned, the former managing directors of the Kenya Bureau of Standards, Bernard Njiraini and Charles Ongwae inset. Okay, so let's take a look at the front page of, interesting story up here actually before I move on to the Star. Judiciary boss caught up in gold scam case. Britain has sued Chief Registrar Anne Amadi, claiming she used her law firm to swindle him. They tell us there is more on page 3. Let's quickly take a look at what some of those details contained therein are. So let me flip the page. Image of the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary there. It reads, and this report is by Paul Ogemba, Chief Registrar of the Judiciary, Anne Amadi has been dragged into a fake gold scam case after a British man sued her for defrauding him of more than 102 million shillings. And the Metro Bradshaw claims that he paid Amadi through her law firm $742,000 US dollars, about translating to 102 million Kenya shillings for the supply of 1,500 kilograms of gold bars, but it turned out to be hot air. He says he lost the money and never received the gold consignment. And there's a quote here. I don't want to read too much into it so that you can purchase your copy for the purposes of Paul Ogemba. She's among those who orchestrated a fraudulent scheme to obtain money by false pretense through her law firm, Amadi and Associates Advocates. They received the funds and hurriedly withdrew them in cash without adequate supporting documentation, swore Bradshaw. As a result of his complaints, Justice David Majanja issued an order freezing Amadi's accounts, those of her son Brian Ochieng Amadi and their 4 associates, who the businessman claimed had colluded to defraud him his cash. So this is before the courts of law. Amadi dragged into 102 million shilling gold suit as accounts frozen. Okay, let us take a look now at the front page of the Star. I see, first let's see what's on Siasa this weekend. Ethnic imbalance in state jobs lands Ruto in trouble. That is in the 16-page political pullout in the Star. But as for their front page, do or die, state blocks Uhuru Bomas meeting. Kenyatta allies insist Monday NDC to kick out rebels and regain party control is on. And an image here of this should be Singapore's Prime Minister feeding a giraffe. And here at State House, Nairobi, yes, Singaporean Prime Minister Lee Loong feeds a giraffe at the Nairobi Animal Orphanage, accompanied by ICT Cabinet Secretary Eliud Owalo above. Okay, I see also on the front page of the Star, reforms underway, more top KEMSA bosses likely to lose their jobs. Health CS Susan Nakumicha has promised more changes which will affect some top managers at the Kenya Medical Supplies Authority. Speaking on Thursday when she inaugurated the new board, the CS said the changes will come immediately after ongoing investigations are complete. Judiciary on the spot over missing 177 million deposits. The judiciary is on the spot for taking inordinately long to recover millions of shillings in cash bail deposits siphoned by unscrupulous court officers. Auditor General Nancy Gathungu has flagged anomalies in the handling of the cash deposits. More on page 8 of the Star. And finally on the front page of the Star, medical insurance, government to pay NHIF cover for police reservists. This morning, let me welcome my panelists again and have them weigh in on a couple of these stories I did mention already in studio. We have Fred Makajos, co-convener Movement for Defense of Democracy, and we also have Nurdin Hagai, who is an advocate of the High Court. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for taking the time to be with us in studio this Friday. I'll start with what, I'm seeing sugar in the headline of the Daily Nation, sugar in the headline of Taifa Leo, and sugar on the front page of the Standard as well. But let me start with your take on the increase in the cost of sugar, and that is Taifa Leo Sukari Chungu. Because the sugar, those sugar imports duty-free. Until I think up until about March, but for the first time we are told by Taifa Leo the price of a kilo of sugar has gone beyond 200 shillings, retailing at 210 shillings. What do you make of this development? And I'll start with you, Fred.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Olive, and our viewers out there. The issue of sugar, there is a scandal, there is an increase in price. You've talked about 210. I was talking to some guys in the village 2 days ago. They were telling me that they are buying a kilo of sugar. It's around 220 and some areas 240 shillings. Yeah. Majority of Kenyans.
Which village?
Somewhere in Homa Bay County.
Okay.
Yeah. And that one tells you that majority of Kenyans are still not in a position to afford sugar. And sugar to many, it's very basic. Even if you want to take tea, be it a plain tea or a milk tea, you have to use sugar. But if you are in a position that you can't afford it, then that is a serious crisis, just like unga. When the government talked about unga, they thought that it was only a matter of reducing unga, but not thinking about sugar and other basic commodities. But number two, what I've seen about sugar today, it's on the Standard newspaper and the Nation newspaper about that saga. Yes,
the contaminated
sugar. But, you may wonder that we have serious agencies in Kenya, like the National Intelligence Service, the DCI, but you get that sugar can still be transported from one point to the other without their knowledge. To an extent, I think one of the media stations reported yesterday that they were kept in some store in Thika. You get that bit? In some store in Thika. How? At what point did the KEBSA or the KEBSA people, the KEBS, yeah, the KEBS people, allowed for the transportation of sugar from one point to the other? The people who are involved, they've mentioned that influential politicians, well, we still don't have their names, under CS. Who are they? The public should know, because this is what is going to affect the health of the public directly. You know, today, there is a time in Kenya when people talked about sugar, yeah, the mercury in sugar. That thing went to parliament. It went to other investigative agencies, but at some point, it disappeared. Is it the same thing that we are seeing today? That we have a conversation about sugar today, but tomorrow or next week, it will no longer be a conversation. Is the health of Kenyans important to these agencies? Okay. And what is their role? Are they up to the task so that they can say, enough is enough, let us only give the best thing to the market? All right. Because they are obligated to do so. And if they are not in a position to do so, they must be capable for anything that they have done.
Held culpable. Well, there were suspensions that were announced, and but let's get a little bit more detail on that story. Take a look at this report by Rosaline Obala. Flip to page 4 of the Daily Nation. Rosaline Obala and Juan Moses Nyamori, and they tell us, and this is the story here, MP's top officials said to be behind bad sugar scandal. And the first few paragraphs, Rosalina, I hope I'm not giving away too much, reads as such: the controversy surrounding the release of condemned brown sugar from government custody has sucked in senior government officials and politicians in what appears to have been a well-coordinated plan to enrich a few individuals through the bags of sugar. According to insiders, 2 politicians from central Kenya and 2 senior government officials are said to have orchestrated the release of the consignment. A confidant of President William Ruto said the head of state had ordered a thorough investigation and asked the DCI boss, Mohammed Amin, to hunt down the culprits behind the scandal. I'm curious, Nurdin, are you encouraged by the actions of President William Ruto? He sent his principal secretary for public health packing following the complaint by the Global Fund over the mosquito nets tender, the handling of that tender. We saw immediately after the next day, KEBS boss Jiraini, 26 others sent on suspension on account of the release of this contaminated sugar. You know, it was meant to be converted into ethanol. So are you encouraged by his actions?
Well, we need to give him the benefit of the doubt because he's actually in office, he's new in office, and he's doing his things differently. I do believe that we have a corruption problem in this country. 3/4 of our issues are corruption. And it's not just the financial angle, the moral aspect, because we are being told how these tons of kilos of sugar found themselves in the market, which means someone released them. So the moral corruption is quite present in our society. When you look at, for example, the story about the MPs and top officials, it reminds me of the mercury sugar that we saw in Parliament, where members of Parliament have been bribed with 10,000 shillings in toilets. And that story ended there. It's like we have goldfish memory in Kenya, because something blows up, we forget about it, something new trends, we are running towards it. I do believe that heads need to roll in this issue. There is, we are being told that certain officials and certain top organ people in government, we need to know who they are, because at the end of the day, I had the CS for Health matters to do with KEMSA. She said that top ranking officials in government who are trying to steal money for the sick. Now, she came short of being a referee in a football match where she blew the whistle up to halftime. Now, we need her to come back and blow until 90 minutes so we know who are these officials, so we can be able to solve these issues moving forward, because without sealing the loopholes, whatever money the government wants to collect, regardless of the finance bill that they want to have as a budget, they will always collect, but there will be loopholes where that money will be lost, sadly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we've mentioned mercury sugar here, so let me take a look at the standard report on the same, because they say this mercury sugar is back to haunt Kenyans. Here it is. There we go. Mercury sugar comes back to haunt Kenyans 5 years later. Let me see if I can zoom it a little farther in. There we go. And let us see. This report is by Masharia Kamau. And it tells us, let me just open up my hard copy. It tells us that questions abound as to why about 1 million kilograms of sugar earmarked for destruction had not been destroyed 5 years later. And the sugar which the KEBS had deemed unfit for human consumption in 2018 on claims it contained mercury has now been released to the market irregularly, and their fears it could cause health complications. And looking further down at this report, it is the same sugar consignment that was a subject of controversy in 2018 when it was claimed to contain mercury due to poor handling process after it was ferried in an open ship that had previously carried fertilizer, coal, and other items that may have contained harmful chemicals. And let us see if there's anything else that I haven't touched on here. I do not think so. But, oh yeah, you mentioned the Thika based firm, Fred. Reports indicated that condemned sugar consignment had been released to a Thika based firm, which in a letter to KEBS acknowledged that it had on April 20th received the same. The firm said that plans were at an advanced stage to initiate the destruction process. It is not clear whether the firm, which is an alcoholic beverage manufacturer, intended to convert the sugar into ethanol for its own use or for resale. It, however, received a demand letter from KRA on April 28th, in which the taxman demanded that it pays a tax, but went to release the consignment to went on to release the consignment to the company. Does this speak to, how is it that people are unconcerned about the health of their brother? Being a brother's keeper, Fred, is it just that culture is, corruption is now inbred or imprinted into the Kenyan DNA?
Olive, the values and morals in a society is very key and very fundamental. This is the lack of the values and morals in the society. Number one, the Kenyan taxpayers, they pay government officials, the KEBS guys, to take care of them, because the only person who can take care of an ordinary citizen is the government of the day. And at a point where the government officials are reluctant and they care less about the life of their brothers and sisters in the society, I don't think that even those people should belong to the society.
Where should they be?
They don't belong to the society, basically, because the values and the morals which they lack. And number two, you care less about your neighbor. Even the Bible says that you should love yourself, you should love your neighbor as you love yourself. But this is a situation that the person that is being paid by a taxpayer money goes to an extent and cares less about the neighbor and the people that they live with in the society. But number two, if this thing happened in 2018, yeah, and there were concerns from KEBS, at what point did they agree to release this thing to the market? And when it was being transported from one place to the other, on whose consent? We've seen 27 people have now been suspended many years after this thing had arrived in Kenya, and they were concerned, which were raised by the KEBS itself as an agency. But today we are getting another story that this thing is in the market. Well, when I mentioned the Thika store, I saw in a news in one of our media houses yesterday. They were saying it was transported from one point then to Thika. Then after in Thika store, there were some KRA officials which raided that store some times back. What did they go to do there? Did they, was the intention only to go and collect taxes? Or at a point when they were there, were they aware that these, the sugar, these many bags of sugar was still in that store? What concerns did they raise? Yeah, so I think this is a matter which should be interrogated, because it had happened in Kenya before. It went to Parliament and other agencies. In fact, I don't think whether that report is in the public domain. We don't know where it is stored. This one will also end. You know, in Kenya, things come and they go. Tomorrow, when there is another thing which will be viral, be it a video or what, that will be the next conversation, and we'll be forgetting about this very important thing. Okay. So I think the government must come out, and they have to hold these people capable, and they have to ensure that any person who was involved in this process, at least something has to be done. All right. And we have to get dispense of this one.
Okay, so we need to take a break, but I will come back and pose the same question to you, Nurdin. Is it that we are all capable of this type of action? It's only that we have not gotten the opportunity to line our pockets at the expense of fellow Kenyans. We take a break, we'll be back with more.
Mimi nilikuwa tu pale reserve, nime-maintain, kuna fresh air, nini, na bros between peace. Alafu, imagine shemeji yangu, akakuja ametoka Nairobi, ati yentu yameomoka. Akaniambia, ati Nairobi iko vitu soft, vitu mzuri. For example, tukifika Nairobi, atanipeleka place inaitwa Village Market, tukakulia huko. Si tukapanga safari, sisi ndio hao, tumewasili wapi? Nairobi. Guess what? Huyu mtu badala ya kunipeleka Village Market, akanirutisha Village, akanipeleka Market.
To get Market Village, dial *812*799#. Skiza na Nation.
Wagwan, my people! Another Friday is coming up and we are ready for you.
Piga ya mwisho. Dio kana break voice.
Sitting down with one of the biggest comedians in the country, Jugush will be stopping by with Sele. We have new talent on the block. If you think you can beatbox like him, let's make a date on Friday. Hosted by me, Amina Abdiraba, Osoro on the social, DJ E on the decks, all going down Friday, 10 p.m. only on NTV.
The Trend in association with Spotify.
Babe, have you heard Dance Holding by Uncle Jing Jong?
But have you heard
Have you heard?
Have you heard? Spotify has over 100 million songs.
God is always engaged in our affairs. He's engaged in your life. He's engaged in the life of our community. He's engaged in the life of our church. He's engaged in the life of our nation.
Nimezama katika kina kirefu cha bahari ya mapenzi.
Na
Nasemaje, tumerudi jamani, and this Saturday it's going to be hot like a heater on the biggest entertainment show on the land, Teams Republic. That's why tunakuletea DJ RB kutoka Tanzania. And all the way from Nigeria, the biggest producer, young Willis mwenyewe. Willis, get them.
And in studio, guys, we are bringing you the legendary Iduza. Not forgetting Lash mwenyewe atakuwa in the building. Na kama kawaida, music policy with the courtesy of DJ Rickmo, the Afro King.
All right, welcome back to AM Live. Nurdin, I had asked you a question right before we went on break. Is this just who we are? And should we now just accept ourselves? Are we a lost cause?
Well, you see, the drafters of the Constitution believed when they put Chapter 6 there, that is leadership and integrity, maybe that chapter was meant to bring about leadership and integrity. But you see, leaders are the mirrors of the society. There's no way you'll elect a thief and expect them to go there and take care of whatever is there. Because the moment you allow them to bribe your vote, you are part and parcel of that. You get? And as you rightfully said, yes, it is true, there's lack of opportunities. Once they get opportunities, we would see the same thing. The sad reality is that what I've come to realize that every single government, or rather I've accepted, every single government will have a scandal. Now, the magnitude of each scandal in each government is what differs. We're already a couple of scandals into this new administration. I wonder by the time we're in 5 years, what we'll have seen. Because I see in each coming government, the magnitude keeps going up. So we are going to be shocked. The matter of the mercury and sugar, I really don't think, if members of parliament, some of them are actually part and parcel of that syndicate, obviously the report won't see the light of day. Because as you pray for the rain, expect the mud. They are the mud, so they will most definitely take care of themselves, like what happened the other time when they were being bribed with 10,000 shillings. So we are in for a rude shock, and I believe the day the voter actually realizes that whatever you elect will take care of your assets, or rather impoverish you, then we will see a better day. But as for now, we wait for a new scandal.
Really?
It is true.
That's a new one. I've had it for the first time today. When you pray for the rain,
expect the mud.
Expect the mud.
Yes.
Okay. So the last thing I want to wrap up the newspaper review so we can get into, there's a hole in my bucket, right? Mm-hmm. You know, how sure are we, if we pay more taxes, that we won't be reading about similar cases such as that of what happened in Kemsa, where donor funds were misappropriated. But let's take a look at Jubilee wrangles to begin with. Taifa Leo tells us that NDC ya Jubilee kuandaliwa Jumatatu ijayo. And they quote David Murathe as stating this: mkutano huo wa wajumbe utaendelea ulivyopangwa licha chama hicho kuzuiwa kutumia ukumbi wa Bomas Nairobi. David Murathe asema. Is it suspicious to you, the timing of these renovations at the Bomas of Kenya, Fred? Do you see the state hand pulling the strings behind the scene, or, you know, is it just bad timing for the President Uhuru Kenyatta faction, former President Uhuru Kenyatta faction?
Olive, this has been a game of the government from time immemorial. You know, sometimes they will tell you about renovations. Sometimes there are activities going on in Bomas. So you may not understand. But that is their game, be it as it may. You know, Jubilee Party, and their party leader, Uhuru Kenyatta, and that is the vice chair speaking, David Murathe, saying that the NDC shall continue. I think they have several options. It's not only Bomas of Kenya. There are several options. We have stadiums. We have private the private halls where the NDC, you know, the NDC is for the delegates only, restricted for delegates. It's not a rally. That is where the delegates are going to talk about key issues in their political party. And I think they ought to have been given a chance in the Bomas of Kenya, basically because they had requested. And I think they got the response yesterday. The response to the executive director, Polycarp Hinga, and I think to the Secretary General, Mheshimiwa Jeremiah Kioni. They ought to have been given that chance so that they could go there, deliberate on the issues which are affecting Jubilee as a party. They can see on how to do harmonization, and we advance our democracy. In fact, if we could have been in a mature democracy, those people in Jubilee and the officials could have been given an opportunity. In fact, if they could have even asked for another place to have 2 NDCs or 3 NDCs at a go, they would have been given. Basically because Kenya is still a developing democracy. And in a developing democracy, we should be in a position of giving each and every political party a chance to exercise their rights. And you know, the regime of the day, they said during their campaigns and even before that they will protect all the political parties, and number 2, you would wish to have a strong opposition. You know, Jubilee, if you go to register and what the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya, the agreement which they deposited with the register of political parties, Jubilee as a political party is still in Azimio la Umoja One Kenya as per that agreement. But today, if you see things which are happening in Jubilee party, and I think the support that the other faction is getting from the government of the day is quite alarming. And I think that one should inform all Kenyans that the government of the day is not in a position to advance our democracy, and they are not in a position to protect our democracy that we fought for a long time, and our forefathers fought for, and we are still fighting for. In any participatory system of governance, and in any participatory system of democracy, like the one that we are trying to create in Kenya, you have to give all political parties their rights and their choices that they make as political parties. But you cannot come as a government of the day, then you start cajoling other people, you start creating factions. That today, the Jubilee Party has 28 members, and you get a deputy president saying that the Jubilee Party, out of 28, we have 26. 26 from where? They were elected in Jubilee Party, and the Jubilee Party is in Azimio, and it has been in Azimio. That is the agreement which was deposited with the register of political parties. But today, if you say that you want a strong opposition, you want to weaken that opposition at the same time. You know, that is doublespeak. Okay. And we know the masters of doublespeak in this country. Yeah.
So, I mean, Nuruddin, you know, we are told former President Uhuru Kenyatta releases a notice. It's published in the papers. There is a National Delegates Convention scheduled for, I believe, the 22nd, which is, if Saturday is the 20th, 21st, so that's Monday.
Yes.
Then Kanini Kega and his side install Sabina Shege as a party leader, and the go-ahead say there's no such NDC scheduled. Then we are told, oh, the Bomas of Kenya, which former President Uhuru Kenyatta said would be the venue for said NDC, is informed that it's unavailable. It is undergoing renovations. What do you make of all of this?
This is some serious sibling rivalry, where we have Jubilee A, that is the current Jubilee, then Jubilee B, that is the new government, who are children of that party. And some political issues are being sorted, or scores are being settled, because some feel they formed a party, they helped form a party, and they feel like they were edged out. So they feel like we are now in a position of influence, and we can influence. So how do they influence? Instigate a coup within, get yourself a team, a new faction against another faction. Now we have Kioni does something, Kanini Kega tells him, hold my beer, and he does something different. Kioni goes all the way and removes them as members. They decide to remove the former president as the party leader. But all this happens without realizing that the Political Parties Tribunal gave a direction in that whatever issues they have should be first settled internally. And that is when this NDC issue came up, because after that order from the Political Party Tribunal, the former president then came up with this date for the NDC. Now we're being told Bomas is busy. Okay, it's not the first time. During the campaigns, the current president was meant to have a rally in Fungo Stadium. He ended up having the rally on the road. The former president, the current president was actually meant to have another rally in a stadium, but the stadium apparently had interdomination prayers. We don't know if they took place. So it is more or less the same tactics in every new government. And that's why I'm saddened, because I thought things would change, but I think they use the same cards every other time. And that's why I keep saying how you do anything is how you do everything. So if their issues will be settling political scores, then we'll be in for a very rough ride. This reminds me of Obama and Trump. Trump's administration was always trying to erode Obama's history, and he had something personal with Obama. That ended up bringing back Obama to the political scene, which helped Biden become a president. Now, I'm not saying this will help the former president come back to the scene and help anybody else become a president. All I'm saying is that whatever issues they have, you have to realize that, one, political scores have to be settled. Number two, there is the political parties fund in Jubilee that is enormous. That is also a tussle, because there are those who feel we need to take over this party to control those funds. Because we are told that there is money that has never been spent in Jubilee. We also hear of stories that some money has been misappropriated and some would like to do an audit. So it's an entire circus, but I've heard Kioni say that even if Bomas doesn't go on, they have two more options and a private option. So I am pretty sure if the former president really wants an NDC, it will happen. He'll get a place to have this NDC. But the sad reality is that we are being preoccupied with political shenanigans that really don't help the people. People are suffering. If on my way here today, I saw so many people going about their business, enterprising Kenyans. The only problem is that leaders don't care about them. If they cared about half of their problems, not because I'm sure they can't care about all their problems, just half, then would be far as a country. The sad reality is that we have leaders who are there, they only care, it's more or less self-centered. So how do I make a deal here and there? How do I settle political scores? At the end of the day, he didn't support you. That's fine. You're the president. Move on. Let's work at the end of the day, because we'll keep having these wrangles until when? If, for example, let's say they take over the Jubilee, for example. Yes, you've won the tussle, and then is the price of sugar down? Is the price of hunger down? Is the price of basic commodities down? It's not. You've won that tussle. Then it doesn't make sense. So we need to choose our battles wisely, and the government needs to realize that those who advise it rather need to understand that they made a lot of promises, and the time is ticking. And I believe that the Kenyans of today are well informed as opposed to those of the back days. So you will be judged simply by picking your manifesto and people ticking tick or X. And that is your scorecard for the next 5 years. So I believe we need to shape up and plan on how to improve the lives of the people, as opposed to setting political scores that really don't matter at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let us transition now into the topic of conversation. And this is what we're discussing this morning. There's a hole in my bucket, dear Liza. Faithless